What if fear isn't the problem, but the signal? Today on the ThriveWell Journey, I'm sitting down with Patrick Sweeney, known as the Fear Guru, and this conversation hits different. We break down the neuroscience of fear, amygdala hijack, fight, flight, or freeze, and how you can train courage like a muscle so fear stops blocking your logic and starts fueling your growth. Patrick survived cancer, completely shifted how he lived, and turned fear into a system that's helped people move forward towards what's possible. And for founders and entrepreneurs, we get into his BOODA Doctrine, where belief comes first, because belief is the missing piece that closes the belief gap and turns chaos into cadence. And if fear has been influencing your choices, this conversation right here will give you language, clarity, and a real way forward. What's up, fam? Before we get into this conversation, let me say this. Look, I know it's a thing, right? But if what we do here on this channel speaks to you, if it lifts you, centers you, or helps you see your life a little clearer, I invite you to like the video and subscribe so you stay connected. And if you want these conversations with you beyond YouTube, download the ThriveWell Journey podcast on your favorite RSS platform. It is a small ask that goes a long way, and it really, truly helps us create the kind of content that doesn't just entertain, but actually supports your journey of growth and alignment. So hit that like, subscribe. Let's breathe in, get present, step into the conversation. We are here back on another episode of the ThriveWell Journey, and today we're gonna be talking about fear, man. And fear is a thing for people, and really, you know, we have transitioned our podcast to this season to talking about disruption, purpose after disruption, and again, fear plays somewhere in that. But we have Patrick Sweeney, who is nicknamed the Fear Guru, and you know, I'm excited to have you on, have a conversation with you, go into the depths of, you know, what this looks like and how it really shaped your life and how you experienced it. So, you know, Patrick, welcome. I'm really happy to have you on.
Michael, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all the listeners who are taking time out of their day to tune in and listen to our conversation.
Yeah, we have some great listeners and watchers, and you know, I'm really excited for them to hear this conversation. And like I said, you know, at the top of the show, nickname Fear Guru. Like, what's that? Talk about that a little bit.
Where'd that come from? Well, I had a very disruptive experience in my life. We can talk about it a little bit later if you want. Yeah. But basically, I grew up living the diary of a wimpy kid, right? Like, I was terrified of everything. I saw a plane crash when I was 6 years old on TV, and flying was by far my biggest fear. I couldn't look at the tail of a plane that had a Delta logo on it without flipping out, without my primitive brain taking over. Wow. And then after that disruptive experience, as you call it, near-death experience, as I call it, I changed 180 degrees. So I became Captain Courageous. So it literally, 1 year, diary of a wimpy kid, next year, Captain Courageous. And courage became my superpower, and fear became my fuel. And I was doing a charity bike ride in Boston, and it was like a 100-mile bike ride. And wow. I got in a group. You know, you start doing this, you get in a group with people kind of the same speed as you. One of the guys was a neuroscientist from Tufts University in Boston. Okay. And I said, "Hey, I got a question for you about the brain." And I said, "You know, this is what happened to me." And I said, "How did that happen and why?" And he said, "Well, it's your amygdala. That's your fear center." And he said, why don't you come to my office next week? We'll grab a coffee and I'll explain it to you. So I went into his office. He sat down and he explained everything about the amygdala, our fear center. And he said, you know, if you find this stuff interesting, you should go over to Harvard and talk to my friend Scott Orr, because he's doing all this research on PTSD and storing memories. So I went over to Harvard, had lunch with Scott Orr, and he said, oh, you know, if you really want to find out about how the brain works and how you bring in information and data, you should go see Earl Miller at MIT. So these guys, all these neuroscientists are like handing me off one to the other. And they're all amazing guys, like big forehead, right? Like big brain guys and super smart. and most of them, I'd have to ask them the question like 2 or 3 times, but I don't mind doing that. I don't care if I look stupid because I want to understand what they were saying. And so these guys, after that third visit, I thought, the research they're doing is so cool. It takes 2 years to be peer reviewed in a study, right, before it gets out to the public, and it's really helpful information. And when it gets peer reviewed, it's in some journal that people don't even understand half the words. So I said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to interview as many neuroscientists as I can about their research on fear, and I'm going to write a book about it. So I wrote the book Fear is Fuel, published in March 2020, hit number 5 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, and has helped hundreds, maybe thousands of, thousands of people now, get over their fear and learn how to use it as fuel. So that's the story on how I became the fear guru.
The guru. And there's a lot of things there, right? So you've been on many podcasts, you've been on, I say many, I don't know. My research gave me at least 4. So that for me, that's many. But
bunch.
What is the question about fear? Because you've been asked these questions over and over again. And so I know that, you go in and out, the world of what fear is, and we'll get to the neuroscience of it all.
Yeah.
But what is one of the questions that hasn't been asked of you that people can, kind of learn from what fear is all about?
That hasn't been asked of me?
Yeah. Is there something that you like sit with and be like, I wish I would have shared this, or, I wish that could, somebody would get this knowledge from me in this way?
I think, I've done like 500 speeches since the book came out, and it's so I think just about every question has been asked, except I don't know if anyone's directly asked me this, and it's a little bit of a complex neuroscience behind it, but I'm not sure anyone's asked me how to build courage and what it looks like to build courage, because everyone talks about fear. So with fear, we've got the amygdala. The amygdala handles the 3 Fs: fight, flight, or freeze.
Yep.
And the smart part of our brain is called the prefrontal cortex, and that's right behind your forehead. And that's how we make rational decisions. So if we're going to weigh one choice versus the other, we're going to do it in that prefrontal cortex. That's our intelligence, basically. The amygdala is running this 2 million-year-old piece of software. And basically what it does is it says, when we can't predict the future, we're either going to fight, flight, or freeze. It's going to be one of those 3. And it takes over the prefrontal cortex. So when your amygdala hijacks, you can't think of anything else except doing those fight, flight, or freeze. But there's something really interesting. There is one good study I found from University of like Tel Aviv or something, and it's on a region called the SGACC, the singular something cortex, singular anterior cortex, and the SGACC is your courage center. And what they found is people can grow the size of their courage center. They can increase that SGACC just by making courageous choices. So the repetition, like building muscle, reps and reps and reps. If you do something that challenges you a little bit today, you're going to increase that SGACC. If you do something tomorrow, it's a little more challenging, you're going to increase it. If you keep building and building and building, and this is what happened to me, then your SGACC is going to get stronger, and it can turn off your amygdala. So when your amygdala tries to hijack, that SGACC can say, nope, we're safe. We're going to deal with this. We don't have to be able to predict the future. We can have some uncertainty.
Yeah, amygdala hijack. I learned that. I was in this course, and they talked about the amygdala hijack. And I know about the amygdala, but hijacking. I was like, how does that what was hijacking? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's taken over the rest of your brain.
Yeah.
That's what it's hijacking.
This hijacking. And so fear, so in my assessment is like fear shows up faster than logic, right? And this like
A better way of saying that, Michael, is fear blocks out logic.
fear blocks out logic.
Yeah, yeah,
All
covers it
right.
up.
And so
Yeah,
for somebody who is listening right now, you talk about the SGACC.
yeah.
What are some of the things that they can do to it and start to encourage encourage their courage, and build their courage so that the things that they want to create for their lives they're pursuing,
Yeah.
fear may show up, but how do they just build the courage in order to continue to do that so fear won't lock them into old patterns and old identities?
So I think knowing that you can reprogram your brain, right? Knowing we can put a better piece of software than what we
Mm.
made 2 million years ago to survive and to procreate, right? That's the only thing the amygdala cares about, is passing our genes on to the next generation. So if you know that and you understand and are aware that we can reprogram the mind, then what you'll do is you'll start to notice every choice you make is either made out of opportunity or made out of fear. And I'm talking big choice, if your career or maybe what you're going to do tonight or who you're going to date. It doesn't matter. The only two ways are opportunity or fear. And fear, you can tell, really is the gateway to something interesting, because you're uncertain with it. Our brain's a prediction engine, right? We're trying to always predict the outcome of every next thing. And when something's different, it creates a surprise. A surprise creates what neuroscientist named Carl Friston calls free energy. And it's
Mhm.
basically the root of all fear. So if you can start to become aware of fear in your decision making, and you start to consciously say, okay, I'm afraid to go to this party because I might look foolish, and I just broke up with my partner and people are going to ask me and I don't want to talk about that. If you go through that logic and you say, okay, I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to face this fear and I'm going to see what happens. Then you build that conscious resistance up to giving into the fear. So even little stuff like if you don't like snakes, watching some YouTube videos of guys catching snakes is like a great thing to do, because it might freak you out at first, but it's safe. You just don't like it, and you can kind of sit there and look at it as a producer. I know you're a film background, but you can say, okay, well, I'm going to look at Michael sitting in this seat here watching this snake video. And when you detach yourself, I often advise people to do that. A lot of my speeches, I'll have people get in a cold plunge, right? Do an ice bath or whatever, just because that instills fear in a lot of people. And I'll always say, look at yourself from the edge of the bath or wherever we are, and pretend that you're producing this movie, or you're the director of the movie, and tell me how you want that guy in the water to behave. And that sort of detachment also helps you get in touch with that SGACC, with that courage center.
Yeah, I don't have I mean, I could do an ice bath, but I don't. So I start with a cold shower. so I,
There you go.
so
Yep.
I do the hot shower, then I turn into a cold shower. So I'm like, oh yeah, but there's a refreshment there too. But I had to really train myself into taking cold showers, which is interesting. But you talk about
And there's
uh,
there's tons of benefits. So all your listeners, if one of the things people don't ask me a ton about is like, what would I recommend for entrepreneurs? And it's taking care of your health, right? Because I've seen health stop more great companies than just about anything else. But cold showers and cold plunge, incredible for immune system, testosterone, fat burning, all that stuff. So all
I
your
love.
listeners should be doing that.
Yes, I agree 100% because there's a big shift when I started doing that for myself. So,
Mm.
but you're talking about just to go back to fear a little bit. I I I don't know if I fear them, but I hate snakes when you talked about
Mhm.
that. But I can, if I have to, you know, be around them or watch them. I can do that. But I have a
Mhm.
friend who I sent like
Is this a friend in air quotes, Michael?
no, no. No, it's not me. It's not.
Okay, okay.
It's no. She's a this is she, and she's a friend, and she's terrified of, like, I think spiders or snakes, one or the other.
Yeah.
And then I think I sent her something on Instagram, and it was supposed to be funny. And she wrote back, Mike, don't ever say me like that. It scares me. And so people still, but they, even though it's like so far from them, they're not, it's in their world, but they can still just get that emotion and that feeling, that signal of fear.
Yeah.
What is that keeps showing up for them that, there's no detachment there?
Yeah, and that's a big conscious choice, and I do this when I work with entrepreneurs a lot. The big conscious choice is whether or not you want to address your fear. So for me, I believe all your dreams are on the other side of fear, right? I think everything that we want, everything that makes us happy, everything that's fulfilled isn't necessarily going to come easy to us. We've got to get over the fear and the doubt and get to that beautiful dream that we've been talking about. So your friend, she has to be willing to build up her courage, right? She's got to say, hey, Michael, listen, I'm tired of being afraid at work every time I have to give us, an update on my business or whatever. And I'm tired of being afraid of snakes, and I'm tired I want to work on my courage. And so when someone creates that awareness, then they'll start to see how silly most of their fears are. 99% of our fears are just irrational. We've got, I call it a fear triangle. We've got 3 areas of fear. So one is instinctual, which is just what your friend was talking about. Snakes, sharks. Sharks is like one of the most irrational fears in the world. Like, do you know how many people die every year from shark bites?
When I lived in Los Angeles, there were maybe one, but that was out of maybe what I was there for like 13 years. So yeah.
So it's like 12 a year, and there's millions of people in the water all over the world. So the odds of getting killed by a shark are so minuscule, but people still have that fear because it's an instinctual fear, right? It's bred into our DNA. We also have physical fears, and that's like flying, skydiving, getting hit by a falling rock or something like that. Anything physical we have. And then the last tangent is emotional fears. And that's generally around fear of being rejected from the tribe and, fear of abandonment and all these emotional things. And it's funny because you have to train all 3 to get good at all 3. So I've worked with a bunch of Navy SEALs who are the bravest guys in the world, right? And they're jumping out of a plane in the middle of a hurricane at pitch black at night with 200 pounds of gear on them, and they don't bat an eyelash. They're joking as they jump out the back. But a couple of these guys I've worked with have been married like 3 times, right? Because they haven't worked on that emotional fear. And when things get rough, they go back to what they know, which is fight and then, get out after the fight. So the 3 fears you have to work on. You have to have some consciousness that you want to work on those 3 things. And then once you do, it's that, there's a bunch of different ways of doing it, but one is called exposure therapy. You just start to gradually do a cognitive behavioral therapy, which is just a little bit more exposure, getting, upping the stakes a little bit, and your body adapts to it. Your mind adapts to it. Your fear center, your courage center, all adapt to that little by little kind of, progressive steps.
Yeah. I can attest to that in the emotional part of it. Like when you're building a business or something and like the world of, the unknown, or I don't know what's, what to do next. Yeah. What to do next, as opposed to just kind of stuck in, or not stuck, but just staying in that space of, I don't know, what's out there. You still take steps anyway, to make that business, that dream, the idea happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's what my new book is about. The Founder's Creed. Is about having a creed that allows you to keep taking those steps, right? Because there's something that I call a belief gap. So if you're a founder, you've got a view of where the world can be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? And that's contrary to everyone else on the other side of this big canyon who look at the world the way it is today, right? And so you've got this whole world besides you that sees the world as it is today, and then you're over here with this dream, this idea, this belief, And your job is to recruit people internally, employees and internal supporters, and recruit people externally, which is, investors and customers and journalists and that sort of thing, to join you on crossing that belief gap. And the way you do it is with conviction. And if you have this conviction, if you really believe that you can change the world, you can leave a dent in the world, you can do something, then having the concept I introduce in the book is called the BOODA Doctrine, BOODA. And it's from it stems from an Air Force fighter pilot who created something called the OODA loop. And OODA loop is observe, orient, decide, and act. But to make this work in the startup world, to create companies that can scale in hypergrowth, you need that belief first. So you have to have the B in front of the OODA loop to go through those effectively. But once you do, those steps that you're talking about and that process you're talking about happens automatically, right? You're doing the BOODA loop. As soon as you believe in something, you're going to observe what the world looks like. That's the second O. It's the first O. The second O is orient yourself. So based on your upbringing, your understanding of the industry, your schooling, whatever, you're going to orient yourself, kind of filter out the data. Then you're going to make a decision, you decide, and then you act. And as soon as you act, you get more data. And you get data that your competitors don't have. So you do it again. You believe, you observe, you orient, you decide, you act. You get more data back. Boom, do it again, do it again, do it again. And the ones that win are the ones that get through those cycles the fastest.
I was going to say, that sounds like a good cycle to live through over and over again, because it, like you said, it creates hyper growth.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
So BOODA, belief, the belief gap, B, first O is observe, second O is orient, D, decide, A, act. BOODA.
That's it. You got it.
That's it. And I'm glad you went there. At some point I was going to get there, but you got there faster, which is cool.
Seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah, and it was perfect, because I wanted to talk about, like, you had a BOODA kind of enlightenment, I guess, for yourself. You went from, you said the wimpy, the diary of a wimpy kid, right, into this, this superhero mode. I mean, you faced some wild things, and I attest to that because I did as well. And you had leukemia, right?
Yeah.
And you said that you died in a way, right? And then you came back different. Explain that, or share what that gap was for you.
Yeah, that was. In retrospect, I've said it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I was living this really toxic lifestyle. So 33 years old, I guess, and I was constantly in fear, right? Like I grew up in this really blue collar Irish immigrant area. My dad's first generation Irish immigrant. So no one in my family went to college. I was the first person to go to college, but I was afraid of everything. I had an abusive grandfather, and if you showed any fear, you were a complete wimp. Quit being a pussy. Get back to work. Don't complain. And so if you did, or you felt anything, or I felt anything, I felt shame. So I had all this shame and all this fear. Flying the biggest one, right? So I never did any spring break trips. I never did anything that other people did, because I just make some excuse so I wouldn't have to fly.
Yeah.
But I got decent as an athlete in college. I joined the rowing team, University of New Hampshire, and then when I graduated, I went to work for a bunch of entrepreneurs, and I wondered, I thought, wow, I was getting really good at rowing. I wonder if I could get really good, because if I got good at that and I became a great athlete, that'll bring me courage, right? That'll fix the problem. And so I spent 5 years training for the Olympics, and I finished second in the Olympic trials, 10th in the world, raced the World Cup for 3 years. And I had badass courage on the water.
Nice.
But as soon as I got off the water, boom, back to normal, right? Like to race the World Cup, I had to drink 8 or 10 beers to get on a plane. Wow. So after the Olympics, I went back to business school, because you get a dumb jock entry. You get every top 10 business school has a Navy SEAL entry and a dumb jock entry. So I got the dumb jock entry into University of Virginia, Darden.
Really? I
Business
didn't know that.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. Got to tick those boxes. And so I thought if I make a lot of money, then I'll have courage. That'll get me the courage I'm looking for. So I set a goal 40 by 40. I want to make myself a net worth of 40 million bucks by the time I'm 40 years old. Screw everything else. That's all I care about. And so I was doing that, made that decision, was doing that from the point of fear. And it was fear that was driving all those decisions. And I didn't know it, but my amygdala was constantly on. And I was producing this fear cocktail 24/7. Like I could feel the cortisol, which is a stress hormone, just like sort of seeping out of my body. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I drank, right? So, 5 o'clock every day, I had a little dorm room fridge next to my desk. I didn't believe in offices. So we had, just desks in the first company I started. And, guys would come over like 5 or 6 o'clock, would start having a couple of beers. Then I'd go to some venture capital event and have 3 or 4 more beers, and then, go out with friends afterwards and catch up 3 or 4 more beers, get home at like 1 o'clock after 8 or 9 beers, and then feel guilty about it, that whole Irish Catholic thing, and feel like I had to sweat it out in the morning, right? So I'd wake up at 5, go to bed at 1, wake up at 5, hit the gym, and then spend the rest of the day drinking Diet Cokes to keep me awake and keep me, moving in the startup world. And it didn't take long before that lifestyle, which is like super toxic, caught up with me. And I woke up one morning and I had this really bad pain in my wrist, and I was going to do back, and I said, okay, well, I'll just do cardio and see what happens. And then the next morning I woke up and the whole arm was red and swollen and really angry looking. And I said, well, I should go to the doctor, but I didn't go to the doctor, of course. You know why? I was afraid, right?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And so third day I could barely get out of bed. I go to the doctor and he said, oh, it looks like a staph infection. I'll give you some antibiotics, take a blood test. The nurse will call you back in the afternoon. And the nurse didn't call me back. The doctor did. Oh. And that was a phone call that changed my life. He said, we don't know what it is, but you've got no white blood cells. You have no immune system. Come on in. We're going to check you in, going to do some tests. They did some tests. They couldn't figure it out. They said, okay, we don't know what's going on, but this is really aggressive, and we want to get you to Johns Hopkins, best hospital in the world, 2 hours north of here, and check you in. So my daughter's 1 year old at this point. My wife and I went up to Hopkins, and the doctor said, look, we've got a plan now. We don't exactly know what's going on, but we've got a plan, and we're going to do that. But if it doesn't work, you've probably got 2 weeks left to live. So you should maybe get your affairs in order and say your goodbyes. And my wife was sitting there listening to this. She's 6 months pregnant, right? My 1 year old daughter's at her grandparents' house. And I'm hearing all this. And the only thing I felt at that point, Michael, was this huge sense of regret, right? Like I thought to myself, I missed out on life because I was afraid of dying. And now I'm going to die, and I missed out on everything. And it was like the worst feeling you could possibly imagine. And so, not to spoil the ending, but I lived.
Oh man, yeah. That's a great ending, man.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Spoiler alert.
And I said, if I get out of here, I'm going to get over this fear of flying. Yeah. And so I got out. It took a while for my immune system to build back up, so I couldn't leave my house for a while. And then when I could, I went to Leesburg Airport and I said, I want to take flying lessons. And I'm going to get my private pilot's license. And so the first lesson, I think I peed like 5 times before we even got in the plane, right? Yeah. Hold on one more time. I was so scared. The second time, We went out over the Blue Ridge Mountains and we hit some turbulence in this little 2-seater plane. And I actually think I pooped myself. I mean, not a lot,
wow.
just like a little.
Just a little bit. Just a
Yeah,
little
just
bit.
a little bit. Yeah. But the really strange thing is after maybe the 8th or 9th flight, I fell in love with flying. It became the most fulfilling, challenging, passionate thing that I've ever done. And I got my private license, I got my instrument rating, I got my commercial rating, I got my seaplane rating, I got my tail dragger, and
Wow.
now I fly aerobatics, right? I fly a stunt plane for fun. And even just talking about that, before this incident would have just had me in the corner, like your friend in the fetal position in the corner crying. And but now now I fly anything with a wing, and it's like so much fun and such a great joy for me. That's where, that's why I say all of your dreams are on the other side of fear.
Well,
So there's the genesis of that little statement of mine.
It's so great. Like, so as I'm hearing this, it's like it took the fear of dying in order to live kind of thing. And I want to say that as as we're listening to that story, and anyone who's listened to the story, watching this podcast, there is something in your story that other people can relate to in their life. It may not be that you're about to die of cancer or anything like that, but there could be something that's showing up for somebody in their life and saying, you know what, that's me. Why am I afraid to live the dream that I'm creating for myself? Why am I afraid to, stop living in the old patterns of, the old identity that won't allow me to live this future fulfilled, that I can. And what you live through and what you get to experience now is like, I don't know, 1,000 times better than the way you were living.
Crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Crazy good.
Yeah.
My life is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a little research on you. You got a couple of homes here in the States, one over, in Europe, and you started how many companies?
Five technology companies with 3 exits.
With 3 exits. And like, would you say that that's something that you would have been able to do had you not, kind of shifted who you were being?
No, I think I might have been able to, but there's such a different life experience when you're doing something out of fear versus doing something out of love and joy and opportunity, and and so because I think of Server Vault, which was my first company. It was really one of the first cloud hosting companies, the first cloud hosting ever with security enough for, insurance companies and the government and that sort of thing. And I started Server Vault, raised about $30 million in venture capital and debt. And I made every mistake a CEO could make. And I had this, because I was afraid all the time, I was always in this fight mode. Everything was a battle, no matter what. If someone's coming in, they want a partnership, they really want to try and screw me, I'm not going to let that happen. Gloves on, let's go. And so it was all fear-based behavior for me at that point. And it cost me, right? Like we ended up having to restructure the company. We merged with another company, and eventually we sold it for $350 million to QTS. But the path getting there was partially what led to me getting sick. And it was also what just made me angry, and there wasn't enough, and, everyone was trying to screw me. So I don't, would I have been as successful? Not a chance. I mean, not even close. When I look at how I went from, because I had this imposter syndrome, which strangely enough, all those CEOs that I've spoken with, I'm in this organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and I've done maybe 40 or 50 talks for them, each with a couple hundred CEOs from all over the world, really big companies to $10, $20 million companies.
Oh, that's awesome.
And nearly every one of those CEOs that I've spoken with has imposter syndrome at one point or another in their career. And your listeners, I guarantee you, same thing, 90% of them will have imposter syndrome. But if you know that even the top CEOs from huge companies have that same thing from time to time, it's a natural fear that, you can either flip out about when you're on stage and you're wondering, why am I up here? I'm no expert. I'm not the best guy in this, to, having to give a report on sales figures or whatever. But I think that imposter syndrome, if you're the way I was originally, I would fight it. And so in my first company, I'd wear like $5,000 custom suits. This is running like a 10-person .com company to start, because I wanted to look the part of strong and courageous and great leader. And then after I got sick, it was on my second company, this first one out of MIT, called Odin. After I got sick, I showed up at work in t-shirt and jeans, and I said, hey, we might be screwed because, I've been in the hospital for a couple of months and we lost this client. We lost our COO. I don't know if we're going to make it, past this quarter. And people were like, well, what happened to the rah? I've got everything under control.
Yeah.
General guy, where'd he go? And who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
And so I think that opened up, a lot of opportunity for me to be very authentic and very vulnerable. And I think those are two things that a good leader, particularly a servant leader, needs to have to build up great companies.
Yeah. There's a couple points here. I'll see if we can try to get to it. But the imposter syndrome, listen, like anybody that's listening, like I've heard this over and over again. And that people that we look at, as super successful, I can name, a whole bunch of them, everybody has gone through that space of being or feeling like an imposter, because there's a level that's higher than what they've experienced, and they were still doing it anyway, right? And so just as people are listening, I would consider, just from your story and what you've been doing, you are a successful person and you've experienced that imposter syndrome, right? So speak to the guys who are the guys and the gals that, they're getting to that whatever level it is for them. And they're like, I don't know if I belong here. And just, can you speak to that person?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I think having that belief and that conviction, and that's why that B is the front part, is that eliminates the doubt, right? That your belief is what's going to fight that doubt, and then when that doubt comes in, that's when you have that imposter syndrome. And one of my favorite stories, and you'll appreciate this, is Laurence Olivier, like one of the best actors of all time, and until I can't remember, I think he's 70 years old or something like that. He was acting on stage until he was in his 70s. And before every performance, he'd throw up. And he just, and so his whole career, for like his 40-year career or 50-year career, whatever it was, if he was going to perform on stage to a live audience, he'd throw up. And he knew it. He knew that was his body's response. He said, okay, let's take this step, get it over with, and then get to work. And he did. And it just, amazed me to think that someone so talented, so incredibly experienced and well proven, had this as just part of his routine. He said, look, I know my body's going to react to this way. I know it's bullshit. I'm just going to go through it and then get on stage and kill it. So he did. And I think, my friend Sami Inkinen started 2 unicorns. One was called Trulia, if you remember Trulia.
Yeah, I do.
Which was real estate. They got bought by Zillow.
Okay.
Yeah, for $3.5 billion.
I was like, I didn't see him anymore. But okay, I see why.
Yeah. So, and then the one he started a few years ago is called Virta Health, and he's curing diabetes, which is really cool. And I'm an angel investor in Virta, so they had a $2.5 billion valuation their last fundraising. Nice. So he's really crushed it. And he said to me, we were talking one time on a bike ride. He said, look, everyone knows being an entrepreneur is like chewing glass for breakfast every morning. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you might as well shoot for something really big. And he said, there's not a lot of difference between creating a $10 million company and creating a $100 million company. So you might as well shoot for the $100 million company. Yeah. And if you look, if every one of your listeners who's out there thinking, well, maybe I should start a company, or maybe I could, get my company to really scale and get hyper growth. If you look at the profile of people who've done it, there's somebody just like you who's done it successfully, right? There's no reason any one of your listeners couldn't create the next unicorn. And that's a critical thing to keep in mind, because people from all backgrounds, rich backgrounds, poor backgrounds, Ivy League education, high school education, it doesn't matter. There's examples of success. And that's still, no matter what you think about the United States, I've lived all over the world, and I've lived in, Europe off and on for 15 years. And America, the United States, is still the greatest place of opportunity, assuming you can get in.
Exactly now.
Because anyone can build anything and do anything here. And I love that about this country.
Yeah. Someone's try to connect these two with a belief gap in what I'm about to say. Connecting to what you said, regardless of what you watch on the news and what you hear all the time, maybe news has something to do with, bringing fear-based ideas into people's world. But I still find, if I just sit back and just look at everything and what's happening in the United States, there's still so much opportunity to create, like, from nothing, I hear stories about people who, were homeless, and they're in their cars, and they started building like a ClickFunnels or something like that. And they start to, build their business, and they're not, they're no longer homeless, or whatever the story may be. You can start from ground -20 and still build yourself up. And I know that a poverty mindset kind of probably sets in there somewhere. But if you go and connect with what you're talking about here with the BOODA loop, doctrine, belief gap, that belief gap in who you are, or who you can be, really can play a significant part in your life in switching, like, who you think you are to who you could become. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Okay. So the thing that that brings up for me is that if people want to change and they want to become a better version of themselves, they first of all 100% have to believe that they can do that. They have to believe that they can make change, or they can do great things. Once you have that belief, and that's a great thing to tell your kids, by the way. Tell your kids, if you work hard, you can be anything you want to be. And don't ever tell them they're smart. Don't ever tell them they're a really good athlete, because that creates a fixed mindset. Then they think, oh, I'm smart, I shouldn't fail a test, I'm going to cheat so I don't fail, right? So you want them to have this growth mindset where you say, if you work hard, you're going to be a great athlete. Oh, you got an A on a test? It's because you studied hard, right? So like reinforce that. But if you have that belief and the courage, you can use the BOODA doctrine personally as well. You can use it on yourself. If you say, I've got this belief that I want to create something great, and then your observation is you're going to see the whole world. You're going to see, whatever it is, the apps you want, the friends you hang out with, the way your family treats you. You'll see all this stuff. But the big challenge is the second O in the BOODA loop, and that's the orientation. And this changes everything. This is like the gravitational center of the BOODA loop is the orientation. Because what happens is we make 80% of our decisions every day subconsciously, right? So, before you turn the key to the car or turn on the radio station, your subconscious mind's already made that decision, and you're just going to act out on it for them. Our subconscious mind is largely built by other people.
Yeah.
So we don't choose where we're born. We don't choose the color of our skin. We don't choose the language we speak. We don't choose the number of brothers and sisters we have. We don't choose if we're rich or we're poor. But all of those things go into our subconscious as creating our tribe. This is what our tribe looks like. Anything outside of that tribe, right? I've got white skin, you got black skin, you're outside the tribe. Okay, I'm not going to talk to you. I've got poor homeless person for an uncle, and you guys are all living in these beautiful mansions, right? I'm not going to tell you, you're not part of my tribe. So anything that goes against that inherently from a neurological perspective is wired for us to make decisions about, is this person someone I want to mate with, or is this person someone I want to kill?
Mm-hmm.
And that's our brain has this thing called valence, where we make those decisions, split second decisions. And when we go through the orientation phase, if we really want to change ourselves, then we have to replace judgment with curiosity. And this is really tough for a lot of people. And I have to think consciously about doing it. And I've been doing this for 10 years. And I'll give you an example. If you walk into a Starbucks, so let's say I walk into a Starbucks, very, traditional Irish Catholic background and very conservative. I walk into a Starbucks and I see some dude who looks like he's a victim of a drive-by piercing, right? Like he's got eyelids pierced, nose pierced, right? All this stuff. Yeah, exactly. And then, my initial reaction in my tribe is like, oh, what a freak. Like that, what's wrong with that dude? If you can catch yourself in that moment and you can say, okay, wait a minute, I'm being judgmental. What can I find with that guy that's really interesting or really cool or that I admire? Well, one, he's got a great threshold for pain, right? He must be able to really, suck it up and take it. Two, he doesn't care what other people think, right? He's got enough self-respect and self-confidence, and that's pretty cool. So if you do that, if you stop, first of all, you incorporate both hemispheres of your brain, because normally when we make those judgment decisions, we only use half the brain because it's much more efficient energetically. So we incorporate both sides of the brain, and so we think clearer, and then we impact our future past, which I know sounds a little trippy, but in future, when you walk into the Starbucks the next time, you're going to rely on your past to guide your decisions, right? Yeah. So now if you have that, if you put that into your subconscious memory that this guy's really cool, he made a great latte, it was a good experience. You come back in, you're like, all right, where's my dude? I want to order with him, right? It totally changes the person you are. So as you're going through the BOODA loop, that orientation is all about changing your perspective and getting as many different perspectives on what you observe as possible. And the easiest way is to catch yourself making judgments and replace it with curiosity.
I love that. And that brings me to what I've been listening to or hearing is that, we're not really in control of our first thought if this kind of comes, right? But if we just kind of say, okay, I get that thought, and that thought is not necessarily who I am or what I want to really think. Let me go to my second thought, and then I can really reassess.
That's it. Yeah,
that was for me.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's the same thing, right? It's you bringing your consciousness and what's called agency, right? You've got the ability to take agency over your life, your business, your leadership, whatever it is. And if people are aligned with that in your business, you can do great things, right? Because that's when you go from managing a business to leading a movement.
Leading a movement. That's big.
Yeah, that is big.
That's living. Big. That's living like a great. I like just a great ideal.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna leave it at that right there. So I mean, I was looking at your new book that's coming out, the Founder's Creed, which was talking about the BOODA the BOODA Doctrine, right? And you said that in the world of, and I want to just kind of just go over this a little bit. The problem you state is the market is buying what you're building, but every day is a grind. You need more than the OODA loop, which is to observe, orient, decide, act. Yeah, you need the missing piece that separates $1 billion exit from quiet failures.
Yeah.
Right. So even if it's like, if somebody's listening, it's not like they don't get the concept of $1 billion exit, just kind of go with it, right? Just because it could be anything, right? But then you said the solution is belief. We talked about it earlier. The B comes from, comes before the BOODA. The BOODA doctrine shows you how to close the belief gap and transform your company into unstoppable hyper growth force. And we've talked about that. But just in an everyday practical, I know you talked about the $1 billion exit.
Mhm.
I know we kind of talked about it, but in a practical way, if somebody was to walk away from that, doctrine right now, how can
Mhm.
they apply it to their everyday life?
Sure. Their everyday personal life or their business life?
Well, can we do it in both ways? Like, I mean, because, you have people in different respects.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so for business, that's the easy one. They when you've got to cross this belief gap, right? When you've got this vision of the world and how you can make a dent in it, and then everyone else is over here on the other side, then what your entire goal is to convince other people to do that, but other people are going to have they're not going to believe you, right? They won't have the belief, they'll have doubts.
Hmm.
So your goal every day is to metabolize that doubt, right? And turn it into conviction. And if you do that, the way you do that is to show progress. And this is why a lot of companies get stalled trying to create 100% solution, right?
Hmm.
They'll get to a 70% solution in, let's say, a month on a new app or whatever. Then they'll take another month, 6 weeks to get that other, you know, 30% that they've got left. And so it's because their decision making speed has slowed down and they're not metabolizing that doubt. They're creating more doubt the longer they wait. So when you've got a 70% solution, let it go. Release it. Let people, experience it, because you're going to get data back, right? This is where the loops start to come in.
Just do it
So
ugly.
if you've got people believing, okay, we can get to something that we can manage that has a certain impact, a certain amount of feedback, and then we can change it and we can do it again. We get to that 70% solution, we'll let it go again. Instead of trying to build the perfect result, instead of trying to be 100%. And I've had a bunch of tech guys working for me, a few CTOs who said, no, we can't deliver it. It's not ready yet. It's not perfect. And I said, let's get it out there and find out what our customers think and get as much feedback as we can. Because at the end of the day, and this is personal as well as business, there's no such thing as good news or bad news.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as either one. It's just data, right? It's all data that's going to help you
Yeah.
decide what you do next.
Yeah.
And one of the things that in imposter syndrome causes this all the time is people get that amygdala reaction, that hijack, and they freeze.
Hmm.
And they're like,
Hmm.
okay, so I'm working with a company well, they're in 5 countries now in Europe, but they were looking at the German market, and I talk about this in the book. And they were trying to get into the German market for their clinics. They have these like specialized clinics for removing varicose veins,
Oh.
and they had a huge opportunity in Germany. They've got, their goal is to build up to 400 clinics in 2 years, and the CEO couldn't make a decision. He kept asking, let's get another report. Let's talk to another private equity firm. Let's see what the analysts say about this. And he froze, right? That was because he knew that if he bought this hospital, there was a hospital he had to buy to go with it. He didn't know how to run hospitals. He knew how to run these little vein clinics, but not a hospital. So he was scared.
Hmm.
And that stopped the loop instead of making a decision, getting data back, and using data over opinions, right? That's the way it should always be.
That is, I don't know if you get how powerful that is, but I'm sure you do. But that little segment right there is a very powerful segment. Because if you're listening to that, as I'm listening to it, as I'm, building the media company, like that is so ideal, especially for the project that we're doing right now. And it's like, don't stop the progress, that could really bring information or data that
Yeah.
can, make the 70% to a 90%, 100%, whatever. And one of the greatest things that you just said, is you said there's no good news, bad news. It's just data. When I used to tell myself, man, no, I used to be, I was like, I was never wanting to say or share anything to anybody. I would keep it to myself. Oh, it's a great idea, but I'll keep it to myself, right? It's only a great idea over here.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if, I wanted to do that because I didn't want people to say no, or you suck, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
emotional fear.
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
side of the triangle. Yeah.
That's my thing that I'm working on. But the thing, when I heard this little phrase is no is nothing but data.
Yeah.
That freed me up, man. It freed me up to be like, you know what, even though whatever we're doing is, it's messy, it's not great 100% yet, and maybe 50%, 40%, whatever, just put it out there and be okay to look crazy or fail or whatever, because that is data.
And I think there's a lot of people who have those emotional fears who are afraid to step out there and put it out there for fear of rejection from the tribe, right? It's one of the oldest oldest fears that we have. So, good for you for stepping up there and, recognizing that.
Well, it's in these kind of conversations that I get to really look at the mirror. Because when people like you, like I mentioned before we got on, like we have some like in our short lifetime, we've had like extraordinary guests they bring the real stuff. You know what I mean? They bring the raw, great diamond, platinum kind of information. And I get to listen to this thing like I don't know how many times before it gets to published, and I get to look at myself, what shows up as what's missing, and I could put in place that could make things move further in my life. And this conversation is one of those conversations. And while I'm still trying to host and lead the conversation, and then getting all these
trying to think about how it affects you.
it's a task.
Yeah,
it's a task. But I'm so grateful that I get to cross with or get to the intersection of people like yourself that I probably normally would not be able to if we didn't have the podcast. So I want to just say thank you, because your information is like I said, diamond is platinum. It's better than gold. You know what I mean? And so just everything that you shared today,
like Bitcoin.
It's like what?
Like Bitcoin.
Right.
Better than diamonds and gold.
Better. And normally go just an hour, so I just want to respect that. But what you have to say and who you've been and the things that you've gone through to get to the other side, to be able to share what you're sharing, like guru for sure. You know what I mean? So that moniker really belongs to you. So thank you for being able to share this information and everything that you have. And is there anything that you want to say before I get to the other last segment of this?
I'd say, Michael, first of all, my purpose in life, the purpose of writing Fear is Fuel, my first book, was to help thousands of people, face their fears and learn how to use it as something productive and not cripple themselves. The Founder's Creed, my goal is to help create 1,000 unicorns. So I'm sure there's going to be a couple of people listening to your podcast who are going to be on my list. So I tell them, make sure you contact me and let me know when you're a unicorn. And I think there are simple but not easy tools, which is what I lay out in the book, that you can use to affect your business and affect your life. And the key thing is, that being curious and having that curiosity. And that's what drives, I think, your ability to get over obstacles or to learn from obstacles, to get to metabolize that doubt. And then I think, in a messy situation like your life or like a business, people are really good in general at putting out fires, right? Like it's, we got an emergency I can see where the end is. I can go fix that. I can do something. A lot of entrepreneurs are really good in chaos, right? Those moments of chaos. If you want to succeed in your life and in your business, you've got to learn how to turn that chaos into cadence. And you keep that speed, you keep that flywheel moving, even when there's no fire to put out, right? You keep pushing ahead and you keep driving, and that's what creates. When you create that cadence, you create momentum. When you create momentum, all those people who are crossing that belief gap with you now really believe, and you've got momentum going. That's a movement.
I love that. I love that, right? Turning that chaos into cadence and creating movement, as opposed to squiggly lines. That's how I see it in my mind's eye. Patrick, Fear is Fuel, the surprising power to help you find purpose, passion, and performance. That's on Amazon. You can get on Amazon, or we'll have the link.
Audiobook is fun too.
And the audiobook
during COVID with all the people I wrote about in each chapter come in for a little mini podcast at the end of each chapter. It's pretty cool.
So the people don't read, and there's the audiobook. And then you have the Founder's Creed, which is new, and you're offering the first chapter for people to read in the pre-order.
Go to the site. You can download the first chapter, and as a pre-order, so it releases March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And there's a 25% discount for pre-orders.
That's the founderscreed.com. Well, how about all those links are in the show notes and everything. And this was really meant. This conversation was, number one, meant for people to really call out the fear, and then and really be the awareness, have it as an awareness of what that is for them, and then not have them be stopped by it. Yeah. And then it also
get on the other side of it.
And get on the other side of that. And through that, you can work on building and encouraging your courage and becoming, the person that you see yourself becoming in the world. And you can get that, if you need some more support, connect here with Patrick and get the books and things like that. And I know you have Instagram. Well, you have Instagram, yeah?
Instagram, The Fear Guru, LinkedIn, The Fear Guru. So if your listeners want to hit me up with anything, questions or stories or whatever, I'd love to hear from people, particularly LinkedIn. Is probably spend more time there.
Nice. Okay. LinkedIn, Instagram, The Fear Guru. Oh, I wanted to say too this. I think we have I have a few animals that I love. And I was,
not snakes though.
Not snakes, not even close. But cheetahs. I've always, because I ran track and field, I was in, the sprinter. I've always been attracted to cheetahs. Well, it's dogs, cheetahs, lions, and what do you call them? I was about to say falcons, but oh my God, I can't.
Eagle, falcon.
No, I can't even think of the name of it right now. Phoenix. The phoenixes, even though I know phoenixes they're not real. Those are just my the animals that I really I love anyway. But I saw that you love cheetahs as well, and I think I saw a picture with you with one.
I got to hang out with a couple of them actually in South Africa. Yeah, it was super cool. I did a speaking gig and then went, and there's a it's like a reserve veterinarian center where they do, they help heal lions and they're doing genetic research on why. So hyenas apparently never get cancer, and they're trying to figure out if they can help other animals like lions and buffalo and stuff like that get the same thing. It's like really interesting stuff, but you can go there and you can stay there for like 3 or 4 days and volunteer. And, maybe it's $500 a night to go as a tourist and like $100 a night if you go and you volunteer and help. And so I got to chill out with those cheetahs, and it was crazy because they were so docile, and I'm in the picture you probably saw, I'm petting the cheetah on the head, and I'm thinking, man, it like a flash of a second, this sucker could just take his
Yes.
claws and rip my
Exactly.
throat out.
Yeah.
And you know, so I had definitely had some fear going in there.
Wow. But you know, you had the fear, but you faced it and you went in,
Yeah. Yeah. It was
you
awesome.
know,
Got a
made
great
friends.
photo opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man. So this is just shooting the stuff. So anyway, thank you for being here. Like, I mean, you're living your truth, and I love that. And so just thank you. And you know, for all the watchers and listeners, as we always say, let's make thriving our new normal, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Yeah, take care.
Michael, thank you so much. Thank everyone else for listening as well.
Absolutely. See you next week.